Welcome back to the Williams, Elleby, Howard and Easter YouTube channel. I'm Joel. This is Chase for Personal Injury Lawyers in Kennesaw, Georgia. Today we want to talk about something that can be frustrating to us as well as to our clients, and that is, why is it so hard for people to do the right thing and admit responsibility when they've done something wrong or made a mistake and hurt somebody else? Why, when it's clear liability, when it's clearly somebody's fault, do we see over and over again them coming up with excuses and denying liability? So what Chase and I have done is we've kind of come up with the top 10 reasons that we think this happens. So we're going to go through those with you today. And if you are somebody that's been injured and you know it was not your fault, you know it was somebody else's fault, and they continue to deny liability, maybe this will help you think about what's going on in their brain and behind the scenes. And even though it's not right, understand why it is that they may be denying fault.
Yeah, I want to start first that most of the time, and it's not all the time, but most of the time, when we're talking about, the person denying fault or denying responsibility or failing to take full responsibility, it's usually the insurance company or the lawyers just trying to posture, right? Yeah. It happens often where we're getting in a lawsuit and then, you talk to the person, like, do you admit you rear-ended them? Yeah, they'll admit that, right? Sometimes they don't, and we'll talk more about why they don't, but generally it's usually the insurance company. And my short answer as to why they do that is because insurance companies are in the business of collecting premiums and denying claims, so that's their entire business model. So
yeah, that was actually number 2 on the list, so I'm going to go back to number 1. But no, you're exactly right, because sometimes insurance companies will tell their insureds, look, don't say anything, keep a straight face, keep a poker face, because in their minds, if the person that was hurt understands that they're going to have to fight and go through the legal process in order to recover, they're less likely to do it. So even if it's not the right thing to do, sometimes they'll take a bad posture just to discourage you from bringing a claim.
Right. It's exactly. Like, maybe, but what are you going to do about it? I mean, that's kind of the posture that they take.
That's right. All right. So number 1 on the list is fear of financial or legal consequences. So when I think about it this way, I can just go back to my childhood, or any of us can go back to our childhood and think, okay, well, I was outside throwing the ball around with my brothers. Baseball hit Dad's car. It's got a big dent in it. He's about to pull his belt off or put me in timeout or what. It ain't going to be good. So I'm afraid of what Daddy's going to do to me, right? Same thing. You cause a car wreck. You know somebody's fallen in your business, whatever. The fear of the unknown of what could happen to you through a legal lawsuit or what kind of financial consequences that may have can sometimes override the moral responsibility to be responsible and admit fault when it is your fault.
Yeah, and that's a good point. A lot of it is the fear of the unknown. And what I'll try to do sometimes in a deposition, if I'm, getting ready to depose an at-fault driver, I'll kind of tell them right up front, like, hey, sorry you're here. My beef is really with your insurance company. I know you didn't mean to do anything intentionally. I'm sorry I have to ask you these questions, just to try to kind of put their guard down, let them know that I know you're afraid of the process because it's not something you have to deal with every day, but you and I who deal with lawsuits and depositions and things like that, it's just another day at the office, right? But if you can relay to the other side that, hey, I understand you're afraid, but you have an insurance company that's going to protect you. Are your rates going to go up? Probably, because you messed up, but at the end of the day, that's probably the worst thing that's going to happen.
Yep. What's number 3?
Number 3 is ego and pride.
Did you
I cheated.
Okay.
Ego and pride. Yep. Accepting blame can feel like a weakness. You're right, which is true. A lot of people just don't want to admit that they messed up or did something wrong. And I see that a lot let me back up. I believe that most people in most car wreck cases, I should say, they don't intend to do anything wrong.
Sure.
Right? They don't intend to do anything wrong. They're not trying to hurt someone. They're not trying to mess up. They're not trying to disobey the rules of the road. Yeah. But people, sometimes it's, older folks, younger folks, they will just flat out admit that they did anything wrong because there's just no way. There's no way I would have pulled out if I would have seen a car. They had to have been speeding, right? It's just their pride. They've been driving for so long. I'd never do anything wrong. I'm a very cautious driver. I'm a good driver. They just can't wrap their head around like, hey, you just messed up, right? You got to mess up. And their ego and their pride gets in the way, and they don't want to admit it.
That's right. And so number 4 is closely related to that, but it's really just cognitive dissonance. And by that I mean we want to believe as human beings that we're good people.
Right.
And here's the disconnect there. Good people make mistakes, but we don't want to admit that we make mistakes. So I don't care who we are. We can be the Pope. We've made a mistake in our life. Sometimes that mistake is being rude to somebody, or it is we didn't study hard enough for a test. Sometimes it is we were distracted by looking at our phone or our radio, or we ran out the stop sign and we hurt somebody. So wanting to believe that we're good people and then having to reconcile that with I made a mistake and I hurt somebody is sometimes difficult to do. But what we need people to understand is just because you made a mistake does not mean you're a bad person. You may have made a terrible decision to drink and drive and get behind the wheel, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad person. I may have made a more minor mistake and run a stop sign because your kids were distracting you in the back seat. That doesn't make you a bad person, but it does mean that you did something, you were negligent, or you did an act that caused somebody else harm. And when you do that, it's like we're taught from a young age, you accept responsibility for that harm. But sometimes that's hard to do, and I get it. So what's number 5? Chase?
Number 5 from, not the list, a lack of empathy, right? So it's a lack of understanding. We talk about empathy a lot in trials. You're not allowed to talk about sympathy, but you can talk about empathy, right? Empathy is just understanding or try to understand what that person has gone through, right? So if you lack empathy, you really lack the ability, and you're sort of, I guess, shielding yourself from the consequences that your actions have caused, right? So if you don't really know or see that your wreck might have broken someone's leg and they had to go through 6 months of treatment and things like that, that lack of empathy and understanding sometimes just causes people just to flat out not even want to admit, or just to deny, what it is that they did cause that harm. So.
Yeah. All right. So I think number 6 is what I would call cultural norms of defensiveness. So in some segments of society, we are just taught, don't say anything, don't admit anything, lawyer up, deny, defend, go to the mat the whole way.
Deny till you die.
Exactly. And so that gets incorporated into society's culture at some point, and we just automatically assume that the best thing to do is deny and defend, regardless of whether that's the right thing to do. And so maybe there's some cultural aspects there, because we definitely see deny and defend, fight like crazy tactics, more so in different geographical regions with different diversity makeups and different socioeconomic backgrounds, different culture in the different communities. So maybe there is some culture aspect to it, maybe not. I don't know, but it's just one of those hypotheses that I do have.
Mm-hmm. The next one would be if you're shamed or embarrassed, right?
Yeah.
If you're embarrassed of something, you're shamed that you caused something, you just might try to deny it, right? Stick your head in the sand. Try to avoid the uncomfortable feeling of, being embarrassed just by flat out denying. So I don't see that as much. Usually people, when they're, kind of embarrassed, they'll just admit that they're embarrassed and kind of like, yeah, it's my fault. But, it's definitely another barrier to why people would want to take responsibility.
Yeah. Well, the tendency for people when they're embarrassed about something is to try to cover it up or deflect blame or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I'm thinking about, was it Billy Madison where the kid peed in his pants? And you're like, you ain't cool until you pee your pants.
Right.
And then once everybody had peed their pants, and it was fine, right? But the kid was embarrassed about it and didn't want other people to know about it. So I get it. Like, if you make a mistake, it's not something you're proud of, but it is what it is. So I think there's a lot more admiration and respect that can be earned by admitting when you do make a mistake and do something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the next one would be number 8 is belief that what you did didn't really cause that bad of a harm.
Yeah.
So,
it kind of ties in with the lack of empathy. One's sort of ignoring it, the other one's just believing that it's not that big of a deal.
That's right. Just and I get it, because, for example, if you cause a wreck and somebody's bone's poking out of their leg, yeah, it's hard to not say that was harm, right? But if you cause a wreck and somebody's walking around at the scene, mm-hmm. and then maybe they even get in an ambulance to go to the hospital to get checked out, but you don't see them ever again after that night until maybe you show up in court one day, right? So you're removed from having to see that harm, to see the suffering, to see the pain that they have to deal with. So in your mind, you kind of convince yourself, well, it wasn't that bad. And if
Right.
it's not that bad, then it's easier to deny responsibility. So maybe that's a reason.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point too. You see that a lot also with like minor rear end collisions where, I've seen, you've probably seen our past videos, but I've had cases where the car turned into a mangled mess and our client walks out with some scratches and, just gets checked out and they're fine. I've also seen one where you look at the property damage and you're like, there's not a whole lot, but a client ends up having to have back surgery or something like that, right? So there's really no direct correlation with bad property damage always equals bad injury, or low property damage equals no injury. That's just not true, right? But a lot of people are kind of pre-programmed to believe, well, there's no damage. I didn't do anything. That's not that big of a deal. Like, it can't be that bad, right? We hear that all the time from insurance adjusters. Well, there was only $3,000 in, property damage. How could it be that bad? So yeah, that happens a lot.
Yep.
Next one, fear of precedent.
Number 9.
Yeah, so fear of precedent is basically fear that if you act a certain way, then it's going to keep happening over and over and over again, right? This is almost exclusively in the corporate setting with corporate defendants, that if they pay out a settlement or they, bend on one thing, that's always going to happen, right? So they might know that they messed up in this one instance, but they're going to fight you, tooth and nail and take you to the mat because they don't want word getting out that they, settled a case that was legitimate and they should have settled, just on the off chance that they might start getting illegitimate cases because they're known to, get cases resolved and pay them quickly.
I used to do a lot more product liability work, and it never was really my favorite. It's challenging, but anyway, I got away from it. But I saw that a lot in product liability cases because you would have, let's just say there was a seatbelt in a car that was malfunctioning. Like it wouldn't tighten up when you got in a wreck and it would spool out and bust your face on the windshield or whatever. Let's say it's a GM vehicle and there's 50,000 of this particular seatbelt out in the world, in the country, driving around all over the roads. Well, if they admit that one of them is defective and it's a manufacturing or design defect, or especially a design defect, well, they just open themselves up to potentially 50,000 other lawsuits, or however many people get hurt because of that defect, right? So they have this desire. It goes back to number 1 in the case, like fear of financial consequences. What's going to happen if we get 40,000 lawsuits as opposed to 1 if we pay out on this one? So lots of times that causes corporations to try to protect that bottom line and fight every single case as opposed to voluntarily paying on one.
All right, and that's that's true. I used to do defense work for years too, and a lot of our clients were bigger, restaurants and grocery stores and things like that, and every day someone's going to make a claim or say that they slipped and fell and or got hurt or whatever, and if they just every day just wrote a check, yep, you're right, and they would be out of business, right? So it's like the default is almost always, no, you didn't, we didn't do anything wrong, you're going to have to prove it, which is true, right? It's the plaintiff's burden to prove a case anyway, but you just have to work hard to do it, because if you don't prove it, then your case is worth nothing, obviously. So
that's right, and there are obviously cases that they should fight very hard and defend because they have defenses. But it makes it a lot harder for those who have legitimate claims to bring them, because there's just a lot more work that goes into it because of the desire to and the fear of financial consequences or legal consequences. So I think the last one we have, number 10, is really just, I believe there are truly some people in this world that don't understand what negligence and fault are. Like there is some disconnect in their brain.
There's a lot of people in this world.
There is some disconnect in their brain, and we see it with politicians all the time where we have a video of them doing something and they're like, I didn't do that.
Are you sure that's
And then all of a sudden all their supporters are like, oh yeah, he didn't do that, even though you're watching it, right? So somehow or another with some people there is this disconnect in their brain that does not allow them to understand how something could ever be their fault. And especially when you take the next step and say, okay, the law says in order for you to be at fault, you have to prove 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? And they can't get past step number 1, let alone step number 2. So I think some people just don't get it. Apparently they wasn't raised right. But
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, anything else on why it's so hard to do the right thing?
No, I think we covered a lot of topics. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add.
All right, cool. Well, we hope this video has been interesting or helpful or engaged your thought process a little bit about how and why a lot of people deny liability or refuse to admit fault in personal injury cases. Just something to think about. But if the video has been helpful to you, if you've enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Otherwise, we will see you in a couple of weeks with a brand new video. As personal injury lawyers, we love what we do, and we're happy to share the experience we've gained in personal injury law. To help our family, friends, and YouTube subscribers, we've shared over 300 personal injury videos covering various injury topics. So if you'd like to gain more knowledge that may help protect yourself or a loved one when you're on the roads or out in public, check out our channel or view our playlist of shorts for quick personal injury tips.